Right, so I'm going to introduce Dr. Tosin. She is a GP, practicing GP, and she's going to be speaking to us about depression and mental health. So welcome, Dr. Tosin. Welcome to Worldwide Mission Fellowship.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tosin. Wow, so I'm a GP. I work in Surrey and Kent, and this afternoon I'll be talking about depression in young people. Okay, is there a clicker? Okay. So starting off with, what is depression? Depression essentially refers to a group of symptoms and behaviours sort of in a cluster around 3 core features. So affecting, thank you very much. So affecting their mood, so often presenting with low mood. It can affect their behaviour and their thinking and their general activity. It encompasses characteristic symptoms that have to be present for most of the day, most days, and for at least 2 weeks for it to be defined as depression. Okay. So sometimes people are not quite 100% sure what is low mood, what is depression, and how to particularly know the difference between the two. So anybody can feel low. There's lots of different situations in life that can make somebody feel low, adult, right from childhood right up to late adulthood. But symptoms tend to be short-lived if it's just low mood, and it doesn't necessarily affect your day-to-day living activity. You're still able to carry on and do everything that you usually would. You can still find enjoyment as well in your day-to-day activities. Whereas when it gets to depression, it's more of a persistent, debilitating issue. You can have both physical and psychological symptoms associated with it. And it impairs your functioning, like from a day-to-day, from the very basic things, from brushing your teeth, getting up on time, going to work, going to school, all of those things. And you would just genuinely struggle to feel positive about the future and have pleasure in just the regular day-to-day activities. So just breaking them down into the mood, the thinking, and activity. So the mood, obviously with depression, would be low. In younger children as well, it can present itself with irritability, just generally just not being themselves, having a lack of interest or pleasure in the things that they usually would have interest in. So if they liked, playing football or drawing or what have you, now no longer wanting to do those things is quite out of character for them. Also, it can present itself with physical symptoms. Sometimes you might notice that, it's Monday morning and they're saying, oh, I don't want to go to school, Mummy, I've got a tummy ache, I've got a headache, I don't have any energy. So it can, present itself physically as well. Separation anxiety as well, often in smaller children as well. And a lot of crying. Any child can cry, but when it becomes an excess thing, sometimes it can be a symptom of depression. Now moving on to the thinking and their behaviour. It can affect their concentration. You might get reports from school saying, oh, they're not paying attention at school, or you might find, oh, they're not listening to me. It might not be because they don't want to listen. It might be because actually something else is going on. They might start to have issues with their self-esteem and feeling lack of self-worth, feeling guilty and not being able to quite think straight, feeling indecisive, not making, correct decisions whereas they might have used to be able to. It can also lead down the path further and further into hopelessness, no longer having hope for the future or seeing a future, having thoughts of, even in children, thoughts of death or wanting to end their life. It can also manifest itself in self-harm, in a negative sort of coping strategy. Self-harm has many different ways of presenting itself. It can be cutting, can be bashing their head on a door, it can be various different things they might do with restricting food or increasing food, lots of different ways, anything that would cause harm to themselves. And moving on to physical, it's more of the activity sort of stuff of day to day. If you're sort of noticing their sleep pattern is disrupted, they're struggling to get off to sleep, it gets to bedtime, oh, okay, let's go off to bed. And they're saying, oh, I can't sleep. Or you go to get them up in the morning, oh, I don't want to get up, I can't, they want to sleep more. Just, it's all about changes in pattern, ultimately. You can notice similar things with their appetite, wanting to eat more or not having much of an appetite. Energy levels going down, feeling fatigued, when really they should have slept well, they've rested well, but still just not having as much energy. It can also be on the flip side, being agitated, restless. In more extreme cases with depression, it can go quite down a path of something called psychomotive retardation, where ultimately they can't do anything. Some people become mute, they're not speaking, they're not moving, they're not doing anything, but these are very extreme cases. So how common is depression in young people? It is less common in younger children because, of course, they're still emotionally developing. It tends to be more prevalent in adolescence, when you get into the teenagers, where the hormones are sort of up and down, they're experiencing more, they're understanding more of their emotions, it becomes more of an issue. It's up to 25% of teens would have experienced an episode of depression by the age of 19. So it is something that is quite fairly common. You do have similar rates between males and females up until they get to the teens, where actually with females it's actually twice as prevalent in the teens. But that is for various reasons, some of which is hormonal changes. Studies also show that female children develop emotionally sooner than males, so their understanding of emotions comes a bit sooner, so the ability for that to have an impact is higher. This is quite important to highlight because half of mental health conditions in adults start before the age of 14, and then 75% before the age of 24. So these are all, it's almost setting them up for mental health into adulthood. So if there are things that could be nipped in the bud from young, you can prevent it from being an ongoing thing into adulthood and further life. So why is this important to identify? It's horrible to talk about, but depression can sometimes lead to suicide. Up to 32%, in a study, up to 32% of those followed up with depression by the age of 31 had made an attempt on suicide. So we have to sort of try our best to pick up on these symptoms so that we can help prevent it going down those pathways. Other things we also have to think about is the impact that they can have on their education. We all know how important education is, being that ticket to having a good, positive adulthood. So it can have those impacts there. And also the other lasting implications. It can impair you. Your brain as a child is plastic, is constantly molding. If it is subjected to trauma, depressive episodes, those things set things in motion for your ability to think and process things further on in life. So it can impair how you are with finances, how you are socially, leading to, criminal activity, teenage pregnancy, not just the social aspects, but also physical health problems as well. But we also have to think about other things that could be at play, that could be contributing, that are actually quite simple to rule out. So could your child be anemic? What is their diet like? Do they have enough iron in their diet? Are they having enough vitamin B12, folate? These are simple things that could be checked with a blood test, especially if you know that your child is a fussy eater. What is the possibility that they could have a deficiency? There's a lot of brown-skinned people here as well today. So Being of a darker skin, the melanin in our skin helps protect us from the sunlight. But obviously, when you're coming to environments where there's not as much sun, your body is now not going to get those benefits of the sun, one of which is vitamin D, a very, very important vitamin. So I would advise anybody, children right up to adulthood, particularly in the winter months, please take vitamin D. It's just better safe than sorry, just take it, because it can manifest itself in physical symptoms, muscle ache, fatigue, depression, poor sleep, poor appetite, so many things. And it's so simple, like Tesco, Sainsbury's, they all have vitamin D from children right up to adulthood. Other things, hormonal imbalances, thyroid conditions, underactive thyroid. If you're having recurrent viral infections, your immune system is busy. That can then affect how you feel emotionally and your well-being. Children are not often on medication unless they need to be, but those medications do have their potential side effects. So if a child had an inflammatory condition, they're on long-term steroids, for example, that's something that can affect their mood. Other things as well, there's a lot of talk these days about children with ADHD. There's a lot more diagnosis. We have to think as well, yes, they have their benefits. You want to help them focus and achieve well academically, but they also do have their implications as well, potential impacts to their mental health. So there's a lot of balancing things. Treat them, but then also think about potential side effects. So, what is leading children up to depression? What are the things that can contribute to that? There's so many risk factors. There are many, multifactorial. There's both the genetics, the things that we can't change, but then there's the environment that they grow up in, which are the things that we can change. So family history. Is there a family history of mental health, drug abuse, substance abuse? If the child has other mental health problems, they could also be at risk of having depression as well. Social problems, growing up in an environment of poverty, if they're in homes or homelessness, family discord as well. Children are watching us all the time. Those little arguments, if, for example, nobody hopes or prays for family discord, but if there are times where you know that there is conflict at home or there's potential separation or what have you, whether you think your child is okay or not, you have to create an open environment to discuss how they feel about the situation. And if it's something that you feel that you can't speak to them, is there somebody that you can get to speak with them, a professional, to help guide them through those situations, whether there's someone within, the church community that is trusted or within family that they're able to open up to. We've also already mentioned about the female gender as well. The pressures of academics. We all want to do well, but we always have to strike that balance. Check in with them. Yes, we want them to do well, but pressures are pressures and they have their implications. Other things, bullying. Bullying is quite an obvious one. If you know that it's going on, parents can only do their best, but if you can, speak with the school, have meetings with the school, even if it means taking them out of the school, take them somewhere else. Any traumatic events, being in environments where you could be discriminated against for whatever differences, and I've already mentioned medication already. Now, this slide is something that I want really to be taken note of in terms of adverse childhood exposures. It starts at the bottom, where a child is subjected to trauma. That then further on leads further on the implications that it has. So it disrupts their brain development. From brain development, it now affects them socially and emotionally, how they respond to the world. Further on from there, they now adopt more risk-seeking behaviors that can impact on their health. That then leads to disability, disease, and early death. So anything that we're able to do to combat or help along the way or support can help prevent essentially early death, disease. So it's very important. How is it managed? It's a tricky one. Anything that you can do to help with any traumatic incidences, any of the risks that we've sort of reviewed so far already, anything that can be done to help with those things is part of the treatment as well, because prevention is better than cure, as we all know. It obviously depends on how severe things are as well as to how far the treatment goes. At the very basis, lifestyle, activity, hobbies, exercise, go outside, interact with people, making sure they have regular or structured sleep, rather. No phones an hour before bed, quiet time, no screen time, let them have a well-rested brain. And then therapy. It can be accessed through the NHS, but if you are lucky enough to be able to access it privately, that's obviously going to be a quicker way. Last resorts, when things are quite severe, sometimes they can then be referred to child and adolescent mental health services. The outcomes are quite mixed, I would say, how much they're able to help. But in some cases, medication is given, but it's always in combination with talking therapy to help along. And in rare cases, hospital admissions, but those are cases in which there is risk to their life, there's concern about their thinking ability, their safety, or if it's sort of gone into psychotic symptoms. So where can you find help? It's not just at the door of the GP or at the hospital. It starts a lot sooner than that, like within the community, within schools. Sometimes schools have resources as well. Sometimes schools have counsellors or well-being advisors within the schools to help. There are various online resources as well, but a lot of the time it depends on where you live as to what is available. There are more general help services online, like Kooth. Kooth.com is free. It's easy to access for young people. They can go on there. There are well-being exercises, access to counsellors they can speak to online, and it's confidential. Young Minds is also another helpful charity. They have adult helplines and other, signposts to other resources as well. And in some cases, safeguarding is needed, but if the child is at risk or there's abuse or what have you, and crisis time, A&E, last resort, 111 as well, but if there's concerns about suicide or risk to their life or well-being. Okay, so to summarize, depression encompasses low mood, that is more of a constant that impacts their day-to-day well-being, their ability to continue with day-to-day activities that can affect their activity and their behavior and their thinking. There's multiple factors that can be implicated or a cause for it, genetics and environment, and the very much importance of the adverse childhood experiences because of the impact on long-term health and earlier mortality. The importance of early identification of when there is trauma or difficulty in order to prevent it from escalating. Psychological therapy, and then support within the community, schools, and potentially hospital if needed. Okay. Thank you for listening. Anything questions now?
We're going to have a Q&A now with Dr. Tosin. That was very, very informative, a real education. And we, as a church, we really care about the well-being and mental health of our young people. And I just want to speak 3 John 1 and 2 over our generation who are struggling with many of these things. I work in a school, see it on a daily basis. we declare, beloved young people, I wish above all things that you may prosper in good health, even as your soul prospers. So we just thank God for you, Tosin, for speaking about the mental health, and we just pray for the whole well-being of our young people. So it's Q&A time now. Please, if you have any questions for Dr. Tosin, you can just raise your hand and she will answer for you.
The question I had is,
Yes.
often when we think about mental health, we think about like teenagers or young adults. And I noticed in one of the diagrams you were talking about like children might cry more and things like that. So how young do you see this presenting in children at potentially?
So it can be at any age. So from the time in which a child is able to think and communicate well, that's early enough for them to start presenting with symptoms of depression. If they're already able to do things like brush their teeth and get themselves up in the morning and dress, those things can be impaired. Yeah. It is scary, isn't it? Mm. Hello.
Is there a fundamental difference between a child having depression and an adult in regards to the symptoms?
So a lot of the symptoms do overarch, but when it comes to children, they can exhibit more of the physical symptoms because sometimes they won't be able to express themselves in the same way that an adult can. An adult too can have physical symptoms and say, chronic tummy pain, but they've had all the investigations done and there isn't anything that is found. Those can also be symptoms of depression as well. They do present similarly, but children often in a sort of varied way, a lot of the physical symptoms they might present with. Rather than saying, I feel sad, or expressing their emotions, they might go more towards the physical because they're not able to describe how they feel as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we thank Dr. Tosin so much for educating us and giving us lots of information that will help us all individually and for the young people that are around us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just to let you know, there's bottles of water at the back of the church. You're welcome to go and get one now if you feel a little bit thirsty. We're going to now move to our second talk, which is Dr. Cheryl Clarke. Oh, sorry, I've jumped. I've skipped. Sorry, let me reel it back. Sorry, we're moving to our second speaker, which is Dr. Leanne Armitage. I looked you up, and she's quite renowned and done some amazing things, been featured on various different TV programs. She's got a foundation, the Armitage Foundation, which gives opportunities for diverse ethnic minority medical students and professionals, opening up the field to them. So we just welcome Dr. Leanne Armitage, and she's going to be speaking about One Life.
Thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. As a doctor, health is obviously something that's important to me, but something I'm really passionate about is helping other people to become excited about health, because there are very simple changes that you can do on a daily basis that can really have a dramatic impact on improving your health. And this is important because it's about longevity, it's about living good lives, and it's about us being a steward of our bodies. So I'm going to start with prayer, hallelujah, because we're in church, I can do this. So hallelujah. Heavenly Father, we just come before you and I just celebrate you and say thank you, Lord. Thank you that every single person seated in this auditorium was healthy enough to be able to get out of their bed and to come today, because we do not take that for granted, Lord. There are people in intensive care and various other places in hospital who do not have that liberty and freedom. And I pray, Lord, that as I give my talk today, you will allow the talk to resonate with every individual in this place, Lord. Let them take from the talk what they need for themselves, Lord, to help them with their own health. And I pray that you really allow us to feel a deep sense of conviction about being good stewards of our health and doing the best that we can for our health. In Jesus' name we pray and believe, amen. Amen. So I've got a picture of a car on the screen, and I wanted to ask if anybody can hazard a guess at why I would put a picture of a Mercedes on the screen and write one life. Good. Any other ideas? Okay, so have you guys heard of a gentleman called Warren Buffett? Yeah, most people have heard of him. He's one of the best investors in the world, so a very wealthy man. And Warren Buffett was having a conversation with some students once where he said to them, if I were to give you any car you wanted, no matter how expensive, so you can get your Maserati, your Rolls Royce, any car you want, but the caveat is that this will be the only car you are allowed to have for the rest of your life, you would do your absolute best to look after that car, right? Because it's the only car you can have. And he said, well, what about your human body and your health? This is the only body you're going to have for the rest of your life. And he was just really making the point that it's so important that we do the best that we can to care for our health. And the sad reality is that we live in a time when it's actually really difficult to be healthy. And many of us sometimes think we're making healthy choices and doing things in a healthy way, and we might not actually be. I was one of those people. Sadly, as a doctor who studied at medical school, I wasn't really taught well about nutrition and how what we eat impacts our health and our longevity. And it's my hope that through the talk today, I can break down some of these complex subjects into something that's a little bit more simple and give you guys some real health hacks which will help you to lead a healthier lifestyle. So an introduction was done, but I'll just do another quick introduction. So as I said, I'm a medical doctor. When I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I worked in a few different places, but I've now seen the light, just like my sister did, and I'm going to join her in GP practice. I'm also a public speaker. I love to inspire people to be the best version of themselves in simple terms. And I'm also a book author. I authored a book called The Power of a Dream, which is a book designed to reawaken people's desires to dream in terms of having a dream for your life and your future, and to give you practical steps to help you achieve your dream and overcome fears and the various limitations that hold us back. And I'm also a fitness enthusiast. I do exercise and I do go to the gym. I don't just tell you guys to do it. So, the World Health Organization has a definition for health, and it defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So in simple terms, what it's saying is that health isn't just about your body being in a healthy state. It's about you having a healthy mental well-being, like my sister spoke about. It's about your social environment being a healthy place. It's about having resources around you that can help to support you to lead a healthy lifestyle. So it's a very holistic thing. And now I pose the question, are we a healthy nation? Not really, are we? I'm going to share some facts with you, but I just want to reiterate that the purpose of this talk is not to make you feel condemned or convicted. I was on holiday in Cape Verde last week, and I was eating a lot of bad things as I was doing my research, and God was giving me deep revelations about this subject. So I'm transforming myself, but yeah, I don't want you to feel bad, because it's easy sometimes for us to look at these facts and figures and feel really bad about it, but that's not the point of this talk. I want you guys to feel empowered. I want you to leave inspired about making healthy lifestyle choices. So, at present, 1 in 5 adults in the UK are living with either diabetes or pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is just a term that we use to describe somebody that doesn't have a diagnosis of diabetes, but they're not far from getting one. And diabetes has a whole host of other health issues that it can lead on to, which is why it's such an important thing. In 2022 to 23, 64% of adults aged 18 and over in England were estimated to either be overweight or living with obesity. And we're also seeing this increase amongst young people as well. And within all of the European countries, the UK is the country that eats the most ultra-processed foods. And we're going to go on to talk about what this even is and why it's so harmful to our health. So, We're all taught at school and through life what a healthy lifestyle is. So can some people just shout out what makes part of a healthy lifestyle? A balanced diet. Someone said something? Exercise, yes. Sleep, absolutely. Anything else? Absolutely. Mental well-being, hydration, all of these things, right? So 100%, you guys have got it all right. And what is our modern day diet? This talk is largely going to be about the food aspect of health because it's one of the single most important factors in contributing to your health and well-being. And what is our modern diet currently like? Carb-filled, exactly. Have you guys heard of the term ultra-processed foods? Yeah, exactly. It's lots of that stuff. So it's basically all of this kind of stuff. Hopefully it's not making you salivate too much. But this is what our diet is currently full of. And this kind of food is really dangerous. And again, the point of this talk is not to say you should never touch one of these things again, because they're part of our diets. Food is a social thing. You know, we eat food, we enjoy food. It's nice to eat chocolate cake and all of these various things. But there are ways you can incorporate it into your diet so that it has less of a negative effect. And that is what the point of this talk really is today. So there's a classification system called NOVA, which essentially classifies how processed food is. So processed is just a term we use when you're taking food from its natural state and you're altering it. So the classification has 4 different groups. NOVA Group 1 is minimally processed food. So this is your fresh fruit and vegetable, your fish, your chicken, stuff that hasn't really been tampered with in many ways. NOVA Type 2 is your processed culinary ingredients. So these are things like your olive oil, your flour, your salts, things that have been changed a little bit to preserve them in your cupboards. NOVA Type 3 is processed food. Now, this type of processed food is not terribly unhealthy, but again, it's food that has been processed more. So it's putting tunas in the tins and, you know, it's adding flavorings to packages of peanuts and things like that. Now, NOVA Type 4 is your ultra-processed food, and this is the type of food that has undergone the most processing, so that means it's had all of these additives and preservatives added. It may have been fried or frozen, or lots of things have happened which have taken it from its natural state to something else. And some people will argue that ultra-processed food shouldn't even be called food because it is adding no real nutritional value. And the whole purpose of food is to add nutritional value to your body, right? Now, what might be quite surprising is that even a loaf of bread in the supermarket these days can be considered ultra-processed food because of how many additives and preservatives and various other things they have added. And a simple thing you can do is, when you're in the supermarket, if you're going to buy something, look on the back, and if it has like 20 ingredients, half of which you can't even pronounce, that is a clue that this is probably some ultra-processed food that shouldn't be going into your body, at least not going into your body regularly. Now, have you guys all heard of blood glucose or blood sugar? Yeah, everybody's heard of it, and normally we hear about it in the context of diabetes. But actually, I want you guys to be made aware that blood sugar is important to everybody. Whether you have a diagnosis of diabetes or you don't, every single person needs to be concerned about their blood sugar level throughout the day. Yeah? Now, just in simple terms, usually you have 3 categories for blood sugar. You've got a normal blood sugar level, a low blood sugar level, which is also called hypoglycemia, and a high blood sugar level, which is also called hyperglycemia. And ideally, you know, after you eat food, your blood sugar level will go up a little bit. If you're feeling really hungry, it will dip down. But generally, we want to keep blood sugar within a certain healthy range, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Now, sugar is not the enemy. Every cell in your body, its primary source of energy is glucose, it's sugar. So we need sugar in our body. We need it for our cells to function. But the problem is we don't want to have too much excessive amounts of sugar, because that is when it becomes dangerous. So can anybody tell me what the name of that organ is? We're going to make this a little biology class. It's the pancreas, exactly. So the pancreas is an organ which is seated just behind the stomach, and it's the organ which produces a hormone called insulin. Now, whenever you eat something and your blood sugar level rises because that food is being digested in your gut, the pancreas will detect that the blood sugar level has increased and it releases insulin in response. And insulin is sometimes described as like a key to the doors of your cells, where it opens the doors of your cells and it allows the sugar to go from the bloodstream and into your cells. I really hope that makes sense, or kind of makes sense. I've tried to simplify this as much as I can. So, as I've been kind of alluding to, excessive amounts of sugar in the blood can be quite bad for your health. Yeah, and I've already said it's not just of importance to people with diabetes. And the reason for this is that excessively high levels of sugar in your blood can cause inflammation throughout your entire body. And many diseases are a consequence of chronic and constant inflammation. It contributes to chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, which means things like heart attacks and strokes. It can impact your mood. It can cause anxiety or influence anxiety and depression. It's one of the factors. It can lead to weight gain. The body stores excessive amounts of sugar as fat. And it can also lead to hormonal imbalances. Nowadays, we're hearing a lot, especially women, about PCOS and infertility issues. And sometimes this is linked to diet. And now I've got hopefully an easy diagram. So you can all see, so on the y-axis we have blood sugar level, and on the x-axis we have time. And the green area is a good blood sugar level. So this is a blood sugar level that is just right. It's in the good zone. Now, what often happens is if we eat a very sugary meal, so we have, say, loads of carbohydrates or some of those ultra-processed foods, what happens is that your blood sugar level will go really high. And then the reason why it then comes crashing down is because that organ we just spoke about, the pancreas, it releases a surge of insulin, which then causes all of those doors on the cells to be unlocked by the insulin key, and the blood glucose moves from the blood into those cells, yeah? And so it comes crashing down. So I want you guys just to bear that in mind, and we're going to kind of go back to this, but it's just because I want you to understand what a blood sugar spike is. That's what I'm referring to. The blood sugar level goes really high, and then it comes down because insulin is released, and the cells take that sugar in. Now, repeated blood sugar spikes throughout the day can be quite bad for us because they cause us to crave carbohydrates. Can you guys relate to that, where you might eat something really sugary or sweet, and then, or you're eating a pack of digestives? I confess my sin here in the church, guys. My husband, we got married last year, and I wanted to do things God's way, so we didn't live together before getting married, etc. But obviously, when you marry someone, they see everything, right, because you're living with them. So I thought this was the small pack of chocolate digestives. You know, digestives have a pack this size and this size, yeah? I got the smaller pack, and I ate all of it. And he said to me, my goodness, I've never seen somebody do that before. And I was like, what do you mean? But the reason why I'm saying this is because these kind of ultra-processed foods, which are really high in sugar, you can just eat them and eat them and eat them. If I put 5 bananas in front of anybody in this room, I think you'd all struggle to eat 5 bananas straight. But you don't struggle to eat a whole pack of digestive biscuits. And this is ultra-processed food. So I've got this diagram here called the blood sugar roller coaster, which helps to kind of put this into perspective. If this diagram's too complicated, I've got an even more simpler one afterwards, but I want to start with this one. So at the top of the diagram, we eat carbohydrates, and these ultra-processed kind of carbohydrates like the digestive biscuits. This increases your blood sugar level. The increased blood sugar level is detected by the pancreas, and it then releases insulin. And then the cells start taking up all of that sugar. And remember, excess sugar gets stored as fat. So some of it is stored as fat. And then because the cells have taken up all of that sugar, you then have low blood sugar level. And then your body's detecting this low blood sugar level, which is making you crave more carbohydrates, is making you feel a bit moody. Sometimes people can start feeling anxious and depressed. And then you crave, and then you eat, and you're just kind of in this vicious cycle. Here's another example of it as a roller coaster. So you eat sugar. The sugar causes your energy to rise. You get that dopamine from your brain, so you're feeling really happy about eating your biscuits. And then it crashes because the insulin's released, and then again, you're feeling hungry again, so you start the cycle again. It's very vicious. I used to be a victim to this cycle. As well as craving carbs, as I've said, blood sugar can affect mood. It can cause mood issues when you're having these spikes. It can cause you to have brain fog. It can cause hormonal imbalances, as I've already said, inflammation in the body, and long-term chronic health issues. Now, the challenge we have with the society that we live in today is that most of our foods, or a lot of our foods, can be causing us to be in this kind of cycle because we live in the era of ultra-processed foods. And, you know, these are things like fizzy drinks, beverages, all of the pictures that I showed on the slides, but sometimes even the foods we're having as part of our normal diet, like your macaroni cheese, your fried dumplings, all of this kind of stuff can also put you in this kind of cycle. And again, I'm not saying you have to stop these foods, but there's a smarter way you can eat them where your body doesn't react in this way, and I'm going to show you as we progress. So, as a little activity, I've got three options for breakfast on the screen. On the far left, you've got a fruit smoothie, some banana, strawberries, and apples blended. You have Special K, and then you have an omelette with avocado. So if we start with the fruit smoothie, do you think that this is going to spike your blood sugar level or keep it in a good range, a normal range? Spike, correct. Special K, is it going to spike or keep it in a normal range? Spike. And the omelette with avocado, is it going to spike or keep it in a normal range? You guys are good. Exactly. So the reason why this is so important, I've got another picture here. There's a lady called the Glucose Goddess who I recently discovered, and she's brilliant at explaining things and this kind of concept. So I've stolen all of her graphs for this presentation, but I've referenced her. So you can see the eating time on the x-axis, and then the sugar level is on the y-axis. The green part of the graph is a good sugar level. So we want our sugar level to remain in this zone. And the pink area demonstrates that the blood sugar level is going really high and it's spiking. The reason why I thought it was so important to show this graph is because sometimes we're taught that all of these healthy fruit smoothies are so good for us. And don't get me wrong, fruit is good, and fruit is important as part of a balanced diet. Fruit contains nutrients, vitamins, antioxidants, etc. But when you're blending fruit into a smoothie, you're slightly altering the composition of that fruit, and so the way your body and your blood sugar respond to it is different. So you have to be mindful about even the things you're putting into a fruit smoothie because it's causing these big sugar spikes. Special K does the same. Many other cereals do the same. And what's worrying is that this stuff is marketed as really good, you know, have it for your breakfast. And we're giving it to our children. And look at all of these kids being diagnosed with ADHD and other things. Some of it is linked to diet, which is why we need to be aware of this because we're not. And you know how you know this is true? I used to love having cereal as dessert because it's so nice. I'd have one bowl of Cocoa Pops and one a second. You know, because it's sweet, it's causing us to have that roller coaster. And as you guys were perfectly right, with the omelette and the avocado, which is protein and healthy fat, you're not getting that spike. And what you have as your first meal of the day is so important because sometimes we already feel moody in the morning or we're low in energy because we've spiked our sugar level with our first breakfast meal. Whereas if you can have something like this in the morning or similar nuts, various other things, protein and fat, you're not having those sugar spikes and you feel more energized. You're not hungry by 10 a.m. in the morning. You're ready for lunch when lunchtime is. So now what I want to do is I want to go through some simple hacks which all of you guys can implement to help you steady your blood sugar level. The first is having a savory breakfast like protein and fat as I showed in that previous graph because you're not getting the spike. And the second is eating food in the right order. Now, this is the lifesaver part because this eating food in the right order shows you that you can still enjoy the food you like, but there's just the order you can have them in, which help reduce this effect of spiking your blood sugar level. So generally, you should always start with your vegetables first. This is because your vegetables are a source of fiber. When you eat, say, a salad or some vegetables first, that fiber gets digested first and it coats the layer of your small intestine, which is like the first part of your digestive tract. And that then slows down the absorption of the things you eat after that. And that reduces that sugar spike. And this is why it's really good, because if we're being practical, if you're having chicken and rice, you're not going to... Okay, I'm jumping the gun. Okay, let me finish that, then I'll give that example. So after you have your veggies, you then want to move to your proteins and your fat. So that's like your chicken, your avocado, fish, all of those things. Because again, they're absorbed at a slower rate. And then you want to end with your starches and your sugars, because they are the things that if you have them on their own and you have them straight away, they spike your sugar level. But if you have things in this order, then they're not going to have that impact on your sugar level. And again, I'm going to show some diagrams to make that make sense. But to what I was just going to say a second ago, if we're being practical and you've got, say, chicken and rice and a bit of veg on your plate, you're not going to eat your vegetables first, then eat the chicken first, and then eat all of the rice, right? You like to have a bit of chicken and a bit of rice and mix it together. So something you can do practically is you can just start by having a starter of a salad. So have the salad first and then have your chicken and rice, because the salad has the fiber, it's lined the intestine, the small gut, it's going to start slowing down the rate of absorption of the chicken and the rice that you're mixing together. So this is to help it make sense. The top graph shows a bowl of spaghetti, and it shows that if you only eat the spaghetti, so this is just the carb or the starch, your sugar level spikes, yeah? But if you have salad before you have the spaghetti, so the picture shows the arugula salad, can you see that it reduces the spike, yeah? It has a dramatic effect, and that's just by having a bit of salad before the pasta. There's another concept called adding clothing to your carbohydrates, which is another hack you can do to help reduce that blood sugar spike. So what do I mean by this? If we look at the top graph, if you just have a piece of toast, the sugar level's not gone crazy high, like say with the spaghetti, but it's still gone a little bit high. It's flirting with the pink high zone. But then if you have a healthy fat, like some avocado with the toast, it reduces that spike dramatically. So how I do this practically is I love like banana smoothies, and banana, again, especially really ripe bananas, they can be quite sweet, and because I blend them, it's obviously going to spike my sugar, but I'll have the banana smoothie with some peanut butter, which is from peanuts, so it's like a healthy fat, and again, that will reduce the sugar spike. Another thing you can do is have vinegar before your meal. Have any of you guys heard about vinegar before a meal? Or vinegar in some water? Exactly. So vinegar is an amazing thing. It contains a substance called acetic acid, and it doesn't have to be apple cider vinegar. It can be any vinegar. And that vinegar, if you have 1 tablespoon of vinegar diluted in water, because it is acidic, so it will impact the enamel in your teeth, if you dilute that in water and maybe drink it with a straw, and you have that about 10 to 20 minutes before your big meal, this will dramatically reduce the glucose spike, and I'll show you. So the pasta carbonara, very creamy, lots of stuff in it, it spikes your sugar level. But then if you have the vinegar before that, say 10, 20 minutes before, can you see it? There's a dramatic reduction. When I heard about, I'm a radical person, so when I'd heard about apple cider vinegar or vinegar in general and doing this before, but I hadn't understood it in this much depth. So you know when you kind of understand something, and you do it as a phase for about maybe like a few months, and then you're like, because you're not like seeing the impact or properly feeling it sometimes, I kind of forgot about it because I wasn't doing it completely right. But now that I know about it, I'm so serious that I've been packing like water with straws to have at work and tried to time it 10 minutes before my lunch break. Because when you start seeing and feeling the impact on your body, it revolutionizes your life. And finally, the last hack I want to share with you is moving your body after eating a meal. So after you've had a big meal, dance in the mirror, do some housework, just move your body, go for a short walk, because your muscles are very metabolically active and they're dumping grounds for sugar, for glucose. So if you're engaging your muscles, even at work, do some calf raises at your desk after you've had a meal, because then those muscles will start using that glucose and reduce that sugar spike. So in summary, repeated sugar spikes are dangerous to health. They can contribute to fat storage, inflammation, chronic disease, mood issues, hormone imbalances. And you can reduce these spikes by eating your foods in the right order, clothing your carbohydrates, so having them with the healthy fats or protein, having vinegar before you have a meal. And if you don't like drinking vinegar diluted in water, you can just put a vinegar dressing on a salad, and moving your body. Do we have any questions? I hope I've not overloaded you with loads of information, and hopefully you've taken something from it.
So do we have any questions? Yep. Brilliant.
What's the difference by having fruits on its own and making fruit juices?
Thank you so much for asking that question. So when you have fruit on its own, it still has like the fiber, a layer intact, the fiber layer intact. So if you imagine, say you're having an orange, you know orange is almost like got a skin around it. Like if you're peeling a tangerine, it's got the little skin around it. When you're having that and your body is digesting that, that fiber layer is slowing it down. Whereas when you blend something, you're changing the composition of it and you're breaking it down so it's the way your body digests it, it's not slowed, it rushes it. It doesn't have those kind of same fiber elements which slow down the absorption.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This might be a bit of an arbitrary question, but is there a case for reclassifying what people consider as food?
That's a great question. Sorry, did you finish it? I got too excited.
No, that's fine. Because, I know a little bit about the chemical balances between products. And in some foods, they talk about, removing fats.
Yeah.
But you still get the same taste, the same consistency. But what they've done, they've introduced a chemical.
Exactly.
The esters. It's something that's not
It's so terrible
food.
because these food labels will market it as really healthy and good for you. And some people even argue, if there's packaging that says this is really healthy and good for you, think twice and look at the back, because you shouldn't have to justify that in the ways they're doing it. But your first question was classification. So I think the challenge is that, all of the industries that are selling all of these products, they are multi-billion-dollar industries. Sometimes what they even do is they will fund their own scientific studies to try to justify that their food is healthy. Because people who have an honest mind and who genuinely want to help the people, they might not, because money is power in this world, right? And, scientific studies and stuff, they need to be funded. They require grants and lots of money. So lots of these huge corporations, they will fund their own studies to bias their results and basically make it look like things are healthy. So trying to get reclassification to highlight all these things, it's a great thought, and it's something that in an ideal world we want to do, but there'd be so much opposition and challenges that, realistically, I don't know if we'll reach a time anytime soon where things are this kind of transparent or people are made more aware of what they're actually eating and the impact it's having, sadly.
We've got another question.
Lemon in water. What's the difference between vinegar in water and lemon in water?
That's a really good question. Do you know what? I have to admit, I didn't research that, but that was one of the things I was thinking, because I used to also have the lemon water. So I'm off the top of my head, I don't know 100% what it is with the lemon water. I know with the vinegar, it contains the acetic acid, and acetic acid interacts with the enzymes, and it can also slow the absorption in your gut, so you're not having that spike. With lemon, I'd need to quickly look that one up, because I actually, I should know that one. But that's another one I used to do, lemon and water in the morning. It does something, I'm sure. But ask me afterwards. I'll quickly do some research.
Thank you. We've got another question.
Would you recommend intermittent fasting to also help lower blood
Yeah,
sugar?
I love intermittent fasting, and that's a brilliant question. And you know what? Being a believer, we're often taught about fasting, right? So we already have a head start because we've kind of been taught about fasting. But intermittent fasting also has huge health benefits. If we just look simply, if you're having intermittent fasting, usually when you're about to break your fast, say you've done a fast for church, unless you're really pressed for time, you're not going to break your fast with like a chocolate. Normally, you'll break your fast with like a proper meal. And so generally, people tend to consume fewer calories when they are intermittent fasting, and they tend to eat a little bit healthier. But even besides that point, you've got a whole nother world living inside of you in your gut. It's called the gut microbiome, and it has lots of bacteria that are involved in digestion. And when you're doing intermittent fasting, you are resting your gut. And just as humans, we have something called a circadian rhythm, which is like, we have to sleep and then we wake up and hormones and various things change, which help us to do that. Your gut is very similar. So some of these microorganisms, these bacteria in your gut, they also need to sleep and they also need to rest. But we live in a society where we're eating every 2 hours, every 3 hours, every few minutes, and we're not resting our gut. So I'm definitely an advocate for intermittent fasting. Different people will argue about like the ways exactly to do it. Some people will talk about doing it for days and how it releases stress on your mitochondria, which is like energy compartments in your cells. I think you need to figure out what works best for you. And especially if you've already got health issues, if you've got diabetes or other things like that, consult your doctor so you can have a plan that works for you. I'm not saying everybody should go out and start fasting. You need to personalize it to fit you. But if you are healthy-bodied and you don't have to worry about those kind of things, I would definitely encourage intermittent fasting. And break your fast with veggies first, or protein and fat.
Thank you, Dr. Leanne. Have we got any more questions? Yeah, of course.
This one you're talking about bacteria. Yeah, so kimchi and sauerkraut, are they meant to be good for your...
Again, these are things I've heard about, but again, I've not done all my... And the thing is, with this topic, it's so fascinating and exciting, and there are so many fruits and veg. So it's like I've researched some, but I've not done in-depth research on all of them. I've heard about sauerkraut and kimchi and various other things, and I can't advise specifically today, but when I've done my research, if we stay in contact, I can look it up and tell you. Yeah. But yeah, it's very exciting. There's so many fruits and veggies in the world. Like, yeah, God's done amazing things with creation, but it's a bit difficult to keep up with knowing the details for every single one.
Okay, if we haven't got any more questions, can we give Dr. Leanne a big hand? We thank you so much, Dr. Leanne.
If you want to stay connected, I'm on social media. I can answer the questions I can answer today.
That's brilliant. Yeah, all of her details are there if you want to get a picture, or we can get the information later. Thank you, Dr. Leanne. Knowledge is power, and we've got a lot of knowledge now to have the power to know what to put in our bodies, when to do it, at what time, in what order, and not just eat without any knowledge, which is what I have been doing, but it's going to change. Right, so our next segment is Dr. Clarke, and it leads on nicely because it is about the impact of the power of fasting. There is a testimony. I just want to say briefly about that. It's my husband. I walked the journey with him, although I wasn't fasting, but he was. And I just want to use the scripture, John 10:10. Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Dr. Tosin spoke about death in her a presentation, that our health is so important that, you know, the enemy would like it to be compromised, which ultimately leads to us no longer being here. So Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And I just want to say the next segment is about the abundant life.
Good afternoon, church. Thank you so much for coming out. And thank you so much to my doctor colleague friends. Those talks were amazing. And you've set me up for fasting. And mine is going to be a lot shorter than Dr. Tosin and Dr. Leanne, because I feel you've got all the background already. So we're here just to really, it's more of a testimony of the impact that the Health Day has had on members in our church, our family members. We haven't heard all testimonies, but we are going to share one today. And just before we do that, we're just going to look at these slides on fasting. Oh, sorry, I got ahead too. So, fasting, you know, as Dr. Leanne said, the body needs glucose for energy. But of course, when we go into fasting, we don't rely on glucose after about 12 to 24 hours. And I'm sure for all of you, if you could press a reset button in your body and just start your health all over again, I'm sure you would want to choose that option. And fasting gives you that option. It's like a reset button in your body. It gets rid of the, because you're not relying solely on glucose and excess glucose, it gets rid of the stubborn belly fat, it gets rid of the brain fog that Dr. Leanne was just talking about. When we have too much sugar, we get this brain fog. We get clarity. We now switch our energy from glucose to ketones. And I'm not talking about ketogenesis, where, you know, you have a type 1 diabetic where they might have too much ketones and it becomes acidic in the blood. I'm talking about nutrient ketones that you can live on, and it's really makes your thinking sharp. Your brain operates with clean energy, because for the brain to operate with glucose, it's like burning fire from dirty coal instead of a clean log. So that's the difference with ketones. So it is a healthy fuel that we can use. Okay, now this is my favourite part actually, a little bit of Greek for you. So this is called autophagy. So auto is self and phagy is eat. So it's self-eat. So when we go into fasting, what we're actually doing is, because our body's relying on the stored energy in our liver, in our muscles, the body will start to repair itself because it's not having to use all that energy to digest all the glucose and all the proteins and all the fats. It's now having a time to recover. But in that recovery, we are talking about cells that have been mutated, that because we're so busy enough, we're not sleeping enough, not eating well, those cells then become tumours. With fasting, it actually eats those mutated cells. So you're talking about fasting actually getting rid of potential cancer cells. That's how powerful fasting is. There's also cardiovascular benefits of fasting. So as we know, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the UK. And, you know, fasting again, it resets all the inflammation in the arteries that clogs it up. Or the autophagy, that starts eating up all that inflammation. And I remember actually I was at work and there was a consultant who had major cardiac coronary artery disease, so the blood vessels that supply the heart. And because he was unfit for surgery, he just gave up and said, well, that's it. There's nothing they can do. They couldn't put a balloon in the coronary artery. They couldn't put a stent in. He had to rely on treatment, but even the medical treatment wasn't going to give him much of a future. And he heard about fasting. And he heard that through fasting, he could actually renew the vessels that supply his heart. And lo and behold, this man reversed his heart disease. I was completely shocked when I heard, and that's what sparked my interest. Like Leanne, you know, we've grown up in church, we know about fasting, you know, we know about it for our spiritual health, but you realise, wow, fasting has such an impact on our internal organs. It's not just our spirit man. So we're going to have new hearts again. Thank God for that. And then just going on to hormone regulation, again, and because of all the, like Dr. Leanne already said, all the constant eating, constant sugar, sometimes we don't even feel hunger anymore. And there are two hormones that control when we are hungry and when we're satisfied. And one is called ghrelin, like growls in the stomach. That's how I remember ghrelin. And then you've got leptin. So leptin is when you're satisfied. That's when insulin's been released. It tells the body, you know, you've had the nutrients you need. Now, when you fast, it resets those hormones. So now lettuce tastes sweet to you. You know, it resets your taste buds. It resets everything. And then again for the brain. So there is a hormone, and it is called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And all it is, it's like a fertilizer for the brain. It basically helps nerves in the brain to grow, to form new memories. And this is when the brain is relying on fuels such as ketone, because the brain is not having to go through all the process of breaking down the glucose, breaking down the carbohydrates into the glucose that it needs. And then again here, oh yeah, I mentioned ketogenesis earlier on. And again, Dr. Leanne did say, for fasting, we do recommend for most people, but not if you are relying on a lot of medications. We'd expect you to consult with your GP first, especially if you're on any types of insulins, any kind of diabetic medications, we need you to work with your GP because, of course, we don't want to put you into a state where your blood sugar is too low and then put you into a coma, God forbid. You know, we're here to save lives. So if someone is really sick, if they're end-stage cancer and their body, they're already really cachectic and their body's living off their, using up all their fats and proteins already, for those patients, they need nutrients, so we wouldn't recommend fasting at that stage. But if it's an early stage of, say, the cancer, then fasting could have its place balanced with nutrients, because you're helping the cells to clean up, get rid of the bad cells, and then bring in the nutrients for the healthy cells that are there. Okay, and then again, fasting just helps that whole metabolic reset, so your body is functioning in the way it should. It helps with high blood pressure, it helps with insulin resistance, and not to have high cholesterol floating around the bloodstream anymore. And these are some of the organs that benefit from fasting. Your liver gets renewed, your pancreas, your gut health. As I said about the consultant colleague that I heard about with his heart disease, it was completely reversed. Your skin gets better. Now, fasting, it does have its caveat in the sense that if whatever your main issue is in your body, fasting can, because it's healing the body, you might find if you have a skin issue and you fast, your skin might appear to flare up for a while, because it's going through the stage of being cleaned up. So if the toxins are within the skin, it's got to get out of the skin. So you might find you have a bit of a healthy reaction to fasting, shall I say. And we talked about who shouldn't fast. Anyone that's pregnant, breastfeeding, under 18s, if you have an eating disorder, of course, don't fast. Type 1 diabetes, and anyone with low blood pressure or underweight. Actually, underweight, if you're severely underweight, but if someone is has a low weight, they still benefit from fasting, is what I'm trying to say. It's only if they're severely underweight, I would say that one. So recap on the benefits of fasting. Here is your fasting glow up. You can burn fat, clean your cells, protect your heart, balance your hormones, sharpen your brain, and reset your system. And we just thank God that fasting is something that's been going on in the centuries, and it's God's way to restore the body that he originally designed for us. God bless you.
Dr. Clarke, can we give a big round of applause for Dr. Clarke? Our very own. She's organised this whole thing and brought these wonderful doctors who are literally saving lives. And I think we're now going to go to the testimony. So thank you so much, Dr. Clarke.
Hey everyone, my name is Clint, and 2 years ago at Health Day, similar to the event you're at now, my blood was tested, and I'm not someone who really went to the doctors or anything like that. I was helping my sister, Dr. Clarke, out with the health day, and just at the end, soon as I was there, she said, look, it's probably a good idea for me to get my blood tested. So when my blood was tested, turns out my blood glucose level was 3 times higher than it really should have been, which is quite concerning. And it started to explain a lot of things that had been happening with me in my body for the last couple of years before that. It turns out I had quite severe type 2 diabetes and needed to get that rectified very, very quickly. I registered with a local GP and got put on metformin. That didn't really work for me because of the side effects, and so I got put onto glycoside. And at first, glycoside seemed to be working quite well, but then there were unforeseen side effects. It really started to affect my legs, and I was in a lot of pain. So I stopped taking the glycoside and it just adjusted my diet as much as I could. Now, simply adjusting my diet wasn't quite enough to get the blood sugar and glucose back under control. And so last year I stumbled across a book by Dr. Jason Fung called The Diabetes Code. In that, he advocates that fasting is a really useful thing to use alongside healthy eating to combat and even reverse type 2 diabetes. So I started to do that, started to fast fully 3 times a week, so 3 36-hour fasts each week. Did that for about 6 weeks over the summer period, and it had a dramatic impact on my blood sugar, blood glucose levels. Coupled with that, the only thing I drink is tea, coffee, or water, no other kind of fruit juices or fizzy drinks. And the last checkup I had with the GP and the local hospital, I'm officially in remission, just 1 point away from being no longer even pre-diabetic, but back to normal. And this all came through this kind of every other day fasting, so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And one of the main points about that is that your body has lots of reserves in the liver and the fat cells, etc., which it can use, and makes room for glucose to be stored, therefore reversing the diabetes process. Takes discipline, and of course, we ask God to help us with everything. Now, I did that more intense fasting for about a 6-week period, like I said, in 2024. Since then, something that's much more manageable, I've just skipped breakfast each day, so I don't eat until after lunch, so maybe about 1 o'clock or so, and that helps to keep the body balanced and helps with the glucose levels as well. So I really want to advocate for, because of my own testimony, I want to advocate for fasting as being part of what you do to keep yourself healthy, to keep your blood glucose levels in balance. Of course, always consult your GP, especially if you are already on metformin or any other medicine. But that's certainly my story and what worked well for me. God bless you.
So yeah, that was a wonderful testimony, and Clint's at the back there. So we thank God for the knowledge and the turnaround and the abundant life he's now walking in. So we're going to break for lunch. It's half an hour. Lunch will be served in the back hall. It will be a time to connect and reflect on what you've heard this morning. Okay, God bless you.